Salam and peace. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and you're watching Muslim Network TV. Muslim Network TV is something new and very exciting. It is on Galaxy 19 satellite, reaching United States, Canada, and Mexico. It is also live on Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Apple TV, a lot of social media, as well as on our own website, which is muslimnetwork.tv. Muslimnetwork.tv. So we're there. Uh, it was about 5 months ago. I landed in Atlanta. I was scheduled to give a sermon, and I had multiple programs scheduled for a couple of weeks, couple of days. On March 13th, it was a Friday, a day Muslims have congregational prayers. After my arrival, I was told the board decided there are going to be no congregational meeting because of health consideration. Most of the mosques in America are run by physicians and engineers and professionals, and board operates them, and clergy just handles with the ritual material. So then next flight out was not until 2 days, so I was stuck there. That was exactly the same time. And when I took the flight back to Chicago, there were, I think, 3 or 4 people in the whole flight. America was shutting down. Teachers, probably that March 13th was the last day teachers were in classes in most of the country. And they were asked to teach remotely. How do you do that? All the stuff for kids, the books and the material, the interactivity and the toys and all that stuff, and the beautiful classroom is somewhere else. How teacher is going to teach remotely? And well, they were learning on the job. And I asked my grandchildren, oh, you will not believe how bored they were. And they were smart enough and bold enough to tell me teachers don't know how to teach. Uh-oh. So little ones are judging the big ones, what teachers were trying. So they have 4 or 5 months now that the schools are opening. Well, are they really opening in person or remote? What is going on in public schooling system in America, where almost all children go? Of course, there are some private schools as well. So the chaotic situation in March and April probably will be more settled. But is it good? Is it going to help? How are teachers now better trained to teach online? These are the questions which we'll be wondering about today. And to discuss these things with us, we have 2 very capable people. Dr. Kevin Kumashiro, who has been our guest earlier. Welcome to Muslim Network TV, Dr. Kevin Kumashiro.
Oh, Imam Mujahid, thank you so much for inviting me back. It's great to be here.
You. And Philip Lai from Toronto. Thank you, Philip. Did I pronounce Lai properly? Your last name?
Sorry, I missed that. The last name is Lai, L-A-I, yes. My pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, so should I say Lay or Lai? All right. So Dr. Kevin Kamashiro is an internationally recognized expert on educational policy, school reform, teacher preparation, and a whole lot of other things. He's a former dean of a School of Education at the University of San Francisco. And Philip has Masters of Education and have worked with Oracle and General Electrics and had authored a book on the power of empathy. He has been teaching English online to Chinese students, as well as instructions online to corporate clients. So pandemic and school opening. So what schools are, how many, Kevin, do you have any idea how many schools are opening physically and how many are, any broad idea? What is the current state of affairs?
You know, there's so much variety in terms of what schools are doing across the United States. And because it changes almost daily, it's a little bit hard to characterize. What we do know is that the vast majority of schools right now are kind of teetering between trying to decide whether to open online, whether to go hybrid, which is some combination of in-person or online, or whether to how long to remain fully online. And I think the fact that there's uncertainty about when and how to open safely, as well as the lack of resources and guidance by the federal government on how to do that, I think is further complicating and muddying the waters, which makes this moment so confusing to so many educators, parents, and students.
Well, the pandemic has been there for 5 months to get our act together. Philip, you're in Toronto, Canada. Is Canada schools opening? What is happening there?
Yeah, the plan is opening in September, as similar to last year's. However, as Kevin mentioned, I think there's a lot of option there for parents to consider. It's very tough decisions, and parents are given the options to go online or physically attend the school. And there is also the social isolation, compliance issues in school, so they could not have that many students. And we have a very strong unions here for teachers, so they are get pushing back the start date for a couple more weeks to get things ready and making sure they have enough resources for the school in terms of ensuring the quality of education and also complying with the social isolations regulations. So it's very similar to the US, but it's smaller scale, I think, in Canada.
Well, we heard that you have more reasonable leadership who is thoughtfully taking things better. I mean, I have some staff there, and I have learned that it is more, more things are allowed, physical relationships and things like that have improved there. Kevin, have teachers, American Teachers Federation and other teachers organizations, have they provided some clear guidelines for what government need to do and what teachers need to do? Because concern is teacher safety as well as student safety.
Absolutely. School safety is required for everyone, teachers and students. And I think what we saw throughout the summer, but even sort of ramping up right now, is organizing by teachers unions, both the national level and the state and local level, to basically insist that we need to better adhere to clear public policy and science about when is it safe to open schools. And so teachers absolutely are organizing, are threatening to go on strike if schools don't put into place the proper resources and mechanisms or push back the deadline. What we saw in just the past week alone is that as colleges and schools across the country were opening, we now already have thousands of students and educators who have contracted the coronavirus. Campuses, universities, and schools are shutting down, moving to online because they're seeing in any given site dozens or sometimes hundreds of people getting infected. So clearly the rush to move without any significant change and resources to make schools and campuses ready is resulting in exactly what I think the unions are saying is going to happen, which is widespread infection and sort of another massive spike that our communities are simply ill-prepared to deal with.
Well, for children, I mean, children are children, right? I remember my daughter, I mean, I was trying to do something, not right now, when I have younger children, in my living room, and she came, I mean, she's a beautiful, nice girl at that time, I'm thinking. She came running and disrupted me a little bit. So I calmly told her that, when dad is working in living room, don't run around in this area. And she very obediently listened, okay, dad, I will not do that to disturb you. And as soon as we were done, she ran again. And only on the door, she put a strong brake and turned around and said, Dad, I'm so sorry I did it again. So it is built into the children body to run around and have fun. So it's physical distancing principles really enforceable on children.
Absolutely. That seems like what a lot of educators, parents, child experts are saying, right? Is that the younger children are going to have a hard time keeping their masks on, not constantly touching their faces, whether or not the mask is on, interacting with people and sort of violating the social distancing rules that we want to put into place. And so I think, part of this is kind of a cultural and mental shift in terms of how we think about interacting with other people. But quite frankly, when we look around the world at the nations that have successfully reopened schools, in other words, reopened schools even back in the spring and didn't see thousands of people get infected, what was different about those situations is that the infection rate in the community was very, very low. Right? So that's what's different here. We're rushing to open up schools, but our infection rates are actually skyrocketing. They're worse than they were in the middle of the summer in many places. It's not comparable to the places around the world where schools are actually reopening safely. And so again, it helps us to think about, yes, given what we know about the nature of young children and the inability for many of them to follow these rules that we're putting into place, why rush to reopen when we don't yet have the capacity to do so?
So that's an extraordinary important point, correlating what is happening overall in the society and then thinking of children inability. So if our overall society is going in the wrong directions, expecting children to be the perfect adults is just not going to work. So which countries have properly opened up schools at this moment? Any idea?
Actually, I think what we're seeing is that there are actually countries around the world that are experimenting with opening up schools and haven't yet had to shut. And I'm apologizing that off the top of my head, I'm not really remembering, but there are actually schools in Asia, in Europe, right, where we're actually seeing a safe reopening. And I think our job is to think about how did they manage the community rate of infection, right? And these are countries that follow the World Health Organization that demanded not only a modification of individual behavior, like social distancing and wearing masks, but they also were countries where you saw public health interventions like widespread testing, contact tracing, and mandated isolation. So, schools like the UK, Canada, France, places like Japan, South Korea, Singapore, these are countries that actually reopened within months of shutting down and haven't yet re-shut down, right? So I think these are examples for us to learn from in terms of what is the kind of broader public health intervention that's needed beyond just modifying individual behaviors. Telling students and teachers to behave differently, just like telling people in the community to wear masks all the time, isn't enough. There needs to be kind of a coordinated state level or federal level public health intervention. That's what's actually going to mitigate the spread of the virus.
Okay, Phillips, what are you, since you're instructing people remotely in China, what is the state of instructions and education at a school level? Do you have any idea what's happening in China?
Honestly, I've left it for a few years now, but I've have a constant contact with the Chinese friends and relatives there. I don't think the school has reopened yet, although there's a lot of activities going on in the community level. September, the school would reopen, I believe. And I think this is a contradictories here. I think decisions have been made not to reopen the post-secondary sectors here in Canada. Is very straightforward. Everything is online in September, even beyond September. But there seems to be a rush to reopen the secondaries and lower level schools. So I think it's even more risky to open, as mentioned by Dr. Kevin earlier, about the children's behaviors and all that. So I see a huge contradictions over there.
So let me understand it properly. You're saying in Canada, schools above secondary are going to open, or they're going to be all online, and below is the one which will physically be open?
Yeah, we're talking about reopening the public schools, but not the universities and colleges. So those are online. Well, unless you're in the medicals or, really get to have the face-to-face instructions, majority of the classes are going to be online for post-secondary here.
That's really interesting, because I thought it will be other way around, because the grown up at the universities will be able to, maintain physical distance and do all what is needed. Is it motivated because of the childcare consideration? Because, both parents are working and not enough childcare. So school is being considered as a safe childcare place. I mean, Kevin, does it make sense to you that the smaller children are being asked to go to physically school?
Well, I do think that the call, the demand, the anxiety around reopening the economy is a huge driving force for reopening schools. And that's in the case probably around the world. I can only speak for the US, which is where I study the most, but I definitely think that, absolutely childcare issues. In some states, actually, it's illegal to leave minors home alone. And so, opening up schools is so important in some ways to kind of restart the economy, although many would argue that actually if you give people the money that they need to be able to stay home safely, that's actually a better way to keep everyone safe and reopen the economy. But here in the US, as many of us know, some of our federal leaders, some of the kind of activists are politicizing public health and politicizing school opening, sort of as a way to say, well, we need to sort of not make such a big deal of infections. We don't need to wear masks. We don't need to socially distance. We can reopen stores. We can reopen schools and just get back to normal. And, totally flouting, totally contradicting what science and public health says. But absolutely, I think that there's multiple narratives going on that's informing the decisions and the pressures to reopen schools. And what's in the best interest of children and students are not necessarily the narratives that drive decision making.
You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and with me is Dr. Kevin Kamashiro and Philip Lai, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Assalamu alaikum!
I love Adam's World because it makes me learn in a fun way. That Adam has a green face and orange hair. I like this song. I like how Adam sings. I like Adam's World because it makes me happy. What? No. And here's Adam and here's Anissa. Adam and his sister. Adam is a boy and he is very smart.
Download the new Adam's World app at adamsworldapp.com and let's help tomorrow's Muslims today.
What was it like when you started this network out, when you started Sound Vision those many years ago?
After 9/11, one lady called me and she says, what is your channel which I can watch? And I say, I'm sorry, we don't have a channel. And you know what she said? She said, then how America will know about you?
SubhanAllah. Anything you want to say to the people who are watching? We had one sister who messaged that she grew up on Sound Vision. What do you say to the people who have been long supporters?
Thank you. It is because of you we are able to do all of that. So the generation of Adam's World, you need to take it over for the next generation. And that's my invitation to you. To keep telling everybody where to watch. They can watch it on Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, or easy thing, muslimnetwork.tv, or our YouTube channel, or our Facebook channel. And with your help, inshallah, ladies, the one who called me, what channel should I watch Muslims on? Answer is here and now.
Open up your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
It's Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with two people who have degrees in education. And I wondered if you had any classes when you were doing education degree about online instruction. That didn't exist at that time, did it?
No.
So are there people who are offering degrees in online instructions now? I mean, the world is changing. I mean, even before this pandemic, a whole lot of classes. I mean, Khan Academy was the one which Salman Khan, by the way, you probably know that he's a Muslim. He, so this guy has 40 million students in his through his model. But is online instruction is something on which degrees are awarded right now at the universities?
Yeah, there are an increasing number of courses being offered in what sometimes is called digital technologies and education or online education. The university where I was at, we actually had a master's program in kind of digital technologies and education, which is about teaching online. And I think in addition to existing courses and degree programs that are, I think, expanding around the country, have been over the past few years, I think this is a moment when teacher preparation programs and school leader programs will be embedding or integrating online education more and more, given that there's no indication that this sudden shift to online platforms is going to suddenly go away. Like, even if we were to fully reopen schools and universities around the country and the world, I think we've signaled a shift to increasingly rely on digital platforms. And I don't imagine that that's going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah.
So, Philip, do you agree? I mean, you're using it as your basic tool of earning your livelihood, right?
Right, exactly. I think I did it passively because there's no other options. But I agree with Kevin saying that this is going to stay. And going back to your earlier question, when I was in school, we had the Open University, we have the Correspondence program. They send you a huge menu of information and you study and then you submit something, by mail. That was the older version of online learning. But now there are so many offerings like Coursera, for example. They have hundreds and thousands of offerings. You can learn anything you like over there. So definitely there's advantages going online for a number of the different disciplines for sure.
Yeah, that's a good thing which you brought in, because that correspondence course learning, I mean, there are open universities based on that model for last,
Yeah.
what, 30, 40 years or probably more.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's very a profitable business because low contact, is mainly by is that I think the driving force behind is the motivation of the learners. They send you binders, totally disorganized binders of information, and you figure it out. You write the exam, you earn the credit, you got the degrees. But in today's, if you look at, for example, Coursera, all this online learning is very meticulously prepared and well designed online experience. But I've never said that when we are doing online teaching right now, a lot of this is go by, is impromptu, that we don't have a lot of sophisticated design behind it. It just turned the face-to-face experience online. That's it. So that is the challenge over there for us doing that.
So this may be a good idea, somebody to look into the considerations which those correspondence courses offered, and transform them into current need of interactivity. I mean, you're right. I mean, that was a remote learning without a direct contact, but now that remote learning assets could be used to transform them into interactivity and remote learning. So that is good. But what is the state of teachers' preparedness right now? I mean, at the school level, not at the university level, but at the school level, elementary school, secondary school, and at that levels.
Well, just to build off of what Philip was just saying, I feel like, because we're not really prepared, we haven't been preparing our schools and our teachers and our educators for this sudden transition to fully educating online. What we ended up doing was relying on online platforms for some of the most mundane, simplistic way of thinking about teaching and learning. In other words, we overly focused on delivering content, on sort of covering, curriculum coverage, not so-called falling behind, meeting standards, and we lost a lot of so many of the other things that need to happen for students to thrive and succeed, including things that are about fostering creativity, time to imagine and play, interacting with one another in more personal and social ways, connecting, checking in on students' physical and mental health, and and on and on and on. A lot of the things that we know students need in order to thrive. And I think this goes back to when we think about I think about in the 1980s when the Open University in England became one of the models for trying to think about how we do in what we now call correspondence education in places and for populations that cannot access universities either because of geography or because of finance, right? And so we came up with ways of reaching people. And I think I like absolutely the idea that we think about online platforms really as a way to address equity issues, not simply as a substitute for what happens in kind of back to normal education, right? Because education back to normal, it wasn't all that great to begin with. There are things that are great about schools, and there are things that are problematic about schools. And so we don't want to simply replicate. When we move towards any new platform, it's actually an opportunity. It's an invitation for us to say, how do we use this new experience, this new context, to better address the issues of equity and justice that have so fallen through the cracks in our everyday practices. And I think so that I think is the invitation. And same with then when we translate this more specifically into professional development, the professional development often has looked like frequently over the past few months, how do you better use technology? How do you use this platform like Zoom or that platform, or how do you use this functionality or that functionality? And I think what we need to be focusing much more on, especially now that folks are more familiar with the technology, is how do we take advantage of the technology to better address inequities and injustices that schools weren't doing such a great job on in the first place.
Wow. So you're suggesting, Kevin, essentially to take that as an opportunity to address the existing challenges before, instead of just replicating whatever was happening.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a crisis often it shines a spotlight on the inequities that are already there. And we can pretend that those inequities are not there and just go on like business as usual, or we can zero in on what has now been flagged. And so some examples would be, we always knew that there were vast resource inequities, differences between what one school has versus another, or what one home has versus another, around sort of hardware, software, technology, and so on. Well, this crisis, when we're now moving towards relying on technology, has just greatly exacerbated that inequity. So we know a lot of schools were not able to provide hardware to students, even though, by the way, a study just came out that said almost 100% of middle and wealthy class families in the US have computers and hardware that's needed to access education. But what about families earning less than 30,000? Well, about 40%, which is almost half of those households, do not have hardware. And we know similarly with Wi-Fi access and internet access. I think about countries like Morocco, for example, where one of the things that they did right after they shut down schools was they not only created a website that would house a lot of the curriculum, but they also put a lot of that on television, because that they knew that there are far more of the poorer families who could access television than computers. And it goes back to, Imam, what you were saying before in terms of a lot of people have cell phone access versus computer and Wi-Fi. How do we take advantage of what we know people actually have access to, rather than rely on something that we already know is incredibly disparate between communities?
That's a very good. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. I mean, this is a major issue. So, if in our country, 40% of lower income people do not have hardware to access. What about addressing the same issue in countries who are poorer than us? And the example of Morocco using putting all what you have on television. I mean, television is pretty common also, as you mentioned. I don't know which one is more common in cell phone or television, but providing instruction on television. So, with digital television, you can have multiple channels. So each channel could be dedicated to one particular class and in one particular language. And using the existing technologies to transform. Has anybody written any paper or compared that how people in the poorer countries are trying to address the challenges and the opportunities, as you mentioned, which are offered by this crisis?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot more media reports. I don't know if there's research studies yet, but there are more research media reports that are coming out about what different countries are doing. And Jordan, just to throw out another example of a country that turned instantly to television as a way to kind of reach larger and larger populations of people. Both countries were trying to distribute tablets, although that was very far and few between. Both countries were trying to expand internet access, but that is a challenge as well. But going to your point about television, so what Morocco did was create 4 different television channels that would reach different audiences. And by June, one of those channels also had sign interpretation for students who were deaf or hard of hearing. So let's contrast that with a lot of the developed industrial first world nations like the UK, like France, like the United States. What did we do? Well, we actually said to schools and states and local districts, you're on your own. And so there was a huge variety and difference in terms of what districts and states were able to provide, whether they were able to give the institutional support that's needed for teachers to be able to teach. So some teachers were unable to offer lessons, and Los Angeles County alone, second largest district, we know that in the first few weeks, tens of thousands of students were not even regularly checking in on computer. So we know from the get-go that students were not able to access this education, certainly not in an equitable way. And so I think, again, when we respond, how do we begin with questions of equity and then ripple out to think about other issues? Like, let's start with the equity issues as a kind of much more thoughtful pandemic response.
Well, thank you so much. You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Dr. Kevin Komashiro and Philip Lai about education and the new opportunities to discuss and deal with inequities, and very innovative information about how other countries are trying to deal with that. After these messages.
Assalamualaikum!
I love Adam's World because it makes me learn in a fun way. That Adam has a green face and orange hair. I like this song. I like how Adam sings. I like Adam's World because it makes me happy. What? No. 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 And here's Adam and here's Anissa. Adam and his sister. Adam is a boy and he is really smart.
Download the new Adam's World app at adamsworldapp.com and let's help tomorrow's Muslims today.
What was it like when you started this network out, when you started Sound Vision those many years ago?
You know, after 9/11, one lady called me and she says, what is your channel which I can watch? And I say, I'm sorry, we don't have a channel. And you know what she said? She said, then how America will know about you?
SubhanAllah. Anything you want to say to the people who are watching? That we had one sister who messaged that she grew up on Sound Vision. What do you say to the people who have been long supporters?
Thank you. Thank you. It is because of you we are able to do all of that. So the generation of Adam's World, you need to take it over for the next generation. And that's my invitation to you. So keep telling everybody where to watch. They can watch it on Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, or easy thing, muslimnetwork.tv, or our YouTube channel, or our Facebook channel. And with your help, inshallah, ladies, the one who called me, what channel should I watch Muslims on? Answer is here and now.
Open up your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Beaker from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
It's Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and we're talking with Dr. Kevin Komashiro and Philip Lai about the educational challenges and opportunities for teachers. So, talking about the use of television in instruction as it is used in other countries, what about here? I mean, the homes which have only 40%, you mentioned homes of people under $30,000 annual income have problem with hardware. And most likely they will have a television sitting there. So is anyone working on having instruction through television?
Yeah, so one of the big differences between here and places like Jordan and Morocco is that places like Jordan and Morocco sort of built up the capacity of the public sector to intervene in this moment. And so how is that very different than here? Where here, what we tend to do is we tend to turn to the private sector. And so everyone is on their own, and then we outsource to bring in other folks. And so rather than, for example, investing in the public television network or publicly run websites for curriculum, what we did was simply farm out money through stimulus packages through Congress that a lot of then went towards tech companies to provide resources. So while tech companies did offer some free services to education, what we also know is that the tech companies have actually profiteered enormously in this moment of the crisis. And a report was just released, was it yesterday, that said that the top 12 billionaires in this country now have accumulated a combined net worth of over $1 trillion. And some of them, they saw their worth double or even triple in the months of the pandemic. And who are these folks? By far, they're folks who are the top leaders of the tech companies in this country. So I think that this is a moment for us to think about when we respond, do we build the capacity of the public sector to intervene? Or do we go in this very neoliberal direction, which actually the way you improve things is you privatize, you allow people to profiteer, and all that's going to do is exacerbate the wealth inequities, the resource inequities that already exist in this country.
Well, good luck with that. Because right now the post office is coming on the selling block.
Based on my observations, I think it's very interesting conversation here. I could see China looking at it remotely. They're doing both. In the initial lockdown period, they make all the curriculum, the primary school, high school curriculum on television. So they make sure that reach out to everyone during the lockdown period prior to the summer holiday. But at the same time, the handheld, the mobile learning platforms are booming. So everybody have a cell phone, and there's so many things to learn there, and they could be able to monetize a lot of these offerings. So it's doing very, very well. The several high-tech companies are profiting a lot from this, the pandemic, just like in the US. But at the same time, I think government is also doing something to make sure the inequality issues are taken care of, which I think is a very interesting way to look at it. Unfortunately, what I read and heard about here in Canada is that the administrator at the post-secondary sectors see that as an opportunity for cost cutting. So they turn a lot of classes online just like that because they could cut down the sessional instructors. They could they could expand the class size indefinitely because of the online platform. So this is another side of the opportunity for in the mind of the administrators.
Well, what I heard is providing some personal protection equipment around the world. What about some Chinese industrialist making money on translating online instruction in multiple languages for multiple countries? Here's a business opportunity. Should I register the idea before they start making money on it?
I think translation is going on, ever since they have access to internet. So a lot of translation happening, and the respect for IP is not known in China. So it's happening there. So
that is what are if some teachers are listening to our conversation, who is teaching teachers now online how to be good online teachers? I mean, are there facilities available? I mean, this is a major area. I mean, I try to find out through the Catholic school system in Chicagoland area that is there anything available? To my knowledge, public school teachers have not, everyone is on their own, to my knowledge. So what is your knowledge base in Canada or in US public school system? Is anybody putting money on this major area of instruction?
Maybe I'll go first here very quickly. I have a young son, grade 1. The school, we had a long March break, and then all of a sudden school shut down, everything turned online the following Monday. So nobody was ready for that. The school has done their best to prepare the teacher for that, but that is individual effort. I don't think it's any concerted effort to prepare teachers. And for the last 3 months, I think everybody's learning to swim in the big oceans of different platforms. So I think the answer is no, I don't think there is any concerted effort there, as far as from my own observation.
So Kevin, the government has not giving money to states and cities, and they have the deficit in running their own operations. Do you have any knowledge of somebody putting money, public money for public schooling, so teachers know how to teach better through remote means?
Yeah, to my sense, I mean, my sense is that what's happening in the US sounds very similar to what Philip described as happening in Canada, in the sense that it's the individual schools, individual universities, sometimes school districts, sometimes teacher unions who are trying to offer professional development. I know a lot of universities that are offering their own professional development for their faculty, for example, here in the US. And I know districts are doing the same thing. But how much can you offer, right? It's probably just 1 or 2 or 3 hours at a time. What we do know is that driven by the federal government are kind of money that's allocated to schools in the stimulus packages that right now is totaling over 13 billion directly to states and locals, plus additional billion that's meant for other kinds of educational expenses. Hopefully a lot more if there was I think what's important to recognize is that, so remember, I'm saying 13.5 billion, maybe, and a little bit more so far. There are scholars who are arguing, however, that responding to the pandemic as well as recovering to build our capacity to move forward in the future is actually going to cost over the next 2 or 3 years, maybe closer to $200 billion. So it's many times what has been allocated. And as a point of comparison, let's look at what happened a little over 10 years ago. So when the stock market crashed in the midst of the subprime mortgage sort of global crisis, right? This kind of major financial crisis in 2008, 2009, we saw exactly what's happening now, that in tax income at the state level plummeted. So the federal government gave relief directly to states, right? But the federal government's relief to states, which would fund public institutions like public schools, actually was only for 2 years. And once that 2-year kind of bridge funding ended, the states did exactly what would have happened 2 years prior, which is to fall in massive deficit. So what you saw was that the funding for education plummeted. And while it's gradually worked its way up, it hasn't actually gotten back to the level of funding that it was at 2008. So we were already still underfunded by that financial crisis. And now this financial crisis hits. And the amount of money we're giving to states is far less than what is needed to even recover in the moment. So that's how I think desperate the situation is looking for education. It's so grossly underfunded right now. That's why I think, for many schools, they're like, what else can we do but slash. And so public schools, public universities, that's what they're doing. They're cutting everything they can. And it's so sad and disturbing because this is a moment when families and children need even more than what they normally need. Like normally, out of the 50 million public school students in this country, we provide nutritional support for like 30 million of them, right? All of that ended. And a lot of schools are struggling to think about how they're even going to provide food, even if they open. But of course, if they don't even open, how do they get the food to the families that need it the most? So there's so many things we need to think about how we're so unable as a country to grasp what it means to support children and families in this moment of such dire conditions when we clearly have money because we're bailing out the corporations by the tune of trillions, and yet we can't support the tens of millions of families that have lost a job, lost health insurance, losing loved ones to death, and so on. It's a moment when I think the masses need to be rising up more to demand that public education and public services be ramped up when we need it the most.
Does Canada have similar problem of lunch? I mean, here, a lot of kids go hungry without lunch when schools are not in session. I remember a nice executive of a industry. I don't want to give any company here some credit for that individual effort. He found that company has about 80 trucks which are idle during the lunchtime. Just in Chicago, I'm talking about. And he started using those trucks to get lunch for kids on different neighborhoods. And he felt demand was far higher than what he was able to do. It's no longer there. I don't know if that company is following up with those things or not. But does Canada have any issues with the lunch program when schools are off, kids do not have anything to eat?
Well, I think Ontario is a more affluent part of Canada as a whole, so it's not on the headlines every day. But I think this pandemic's kind of highlight a lot of the issues. The pandemic stopped everything and lets a lot of issues kind of surface, and so we can see them closer. One of the inequality issues, and also the poverty issue as well. So based on my limited observation, I don't think this is the headline issue, but in the core areas in Toronto, in Canada, many major cities in Canada, this is an ongoing struggle for a lot of the low-income family as well. So not going to school means that we do not see the issues, in front of us, but it's there, I'm sure.
Let's talk a little bit about, it's a very useful. Thank you so much, both of you, for bringing your wisdom to conversation here. I'm learning a great deal, and I feel like taking notes while listening and talking to you. One of the things is that if some tips for teachers, for those who are listening. We're talking about a major issue which requires a public commitment or the government commitment and to resolve the bigger issue. But teachers are beautiful people. They have their heart in teaching. They don't get into teaching just to make money. I think they are really in there because they care deeply. So those teachers who are listening, how do they compensate for the absence of personal contact while they're dealing remotely with children? There is a classroom and they're doing instruction online using some of the access technologies, but how do they develop that personal contact? Because that personal contact used to allow teachers in a classroom to pay personal attention, to bring someone who is struggling, to bring them up and understanding, what is the behind the scene going on at home, parents is splitting and whatever is, in some cases abuse is going on. So teachers were sort of a remote personal way of listening post or helping post. How can they achieve remotely these things? Because to me, a personal development instruction is one aspect, that growing that character of a person and being there for them was another one. Single parents, for example, some single parents do 2-3 jobs, and they don't relate, unable to relate. And children have quite a bit of time in school, and they look for a school. I mean, some children are missing schools. They're dying to meet their friends. So how remotely teachers who are listening, what are the 2-3 things they can do to develop that personal contact? And we just got a few minutes left. Let's discuss that.
Okay, maybe I'll just throw in a couple points. I just want to recognize the challenge for the challenges that teachers are facing today. Teaching online is, you need to multitask. It's so much busier than teaching face-to-face. So kudos to them. And the kind of preparation they have to do is much, much more than face-to-face, because you need to prepare everything in advance to make it look smooth online. So great preparation there. And also deal with the fact that, you know, you have minimum control over the other side of the screen, because the children are easily distracted. They have background noises, and you have all these bandwidth technologies issues. So the teachers are in a very, very tough position in this case. So I just want to recognize that. And I let Evan to throw in some tips on how they can do it. But these are the challenges they face, definitely. I mean, recognize that it's so much difficult.
I agree. I think there are so many challenges in this moment. And I think, you know, I'm appreciating those who recommend that teachers take the first few weeks to really try to build those connections. It's what we used to say to elementary teachers over the past few decades, is spend the first few weeks building up a sense of a community and connecting with your students. Well, I think in this moment for all ages, that's so important, because as you're pointing out, you know, this is a moment when we know that the research is showing us that among young people, among school-age children, the levels of depression and anxiety are skyrocketing. So that's happening. Not mental health problems are not just being recorded in record numbers among the working adults. It's also among the school-age children. And we know that extensive time online, especially when there's so much pressure to just be robots and absorb material, academic material, rather than be humans and interact with one another. This kind of robotic way of engaging online is very dehumanizing. It just further contributes to our sense of isolation, to our sense of aloneness, and so on. And so you're so, I think, right on in saying that teachers historically and today have played this incredibly important role as a kind of a mediator for students' lives. They're gauging what's happening in their lives. And it's why it's going to school is where we often see that students are struggling. And it's not that parents aren't paying attention. It's that teachers and counselors offer another set of eyes to look at the lives of our students and to track whether they're suffering from mental health problems, whether they're being abused at home, whether they're being socially isolated, and so on, and can try to intervene. And so I think setting that standard, setting that baseline at the beginning of the year to build on through as the year progresses, I think is really important. And it also communicates symbolically to our students beyond the practical helpfulness of that kind of connection. It sends this message that we know that things are very difficult for you, and schools will be adapting. We will try to adapt school so that we support you in the many needs that you have that you may not have had a year ago.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, you both are contributing to a thinking process, which I hope people who are listening, they care. One thing I can share with you as we close our show, every day when I pray not only for myself, but my parents and my teachers. I mean, praying for your teachers is part of the Islamic culture, because, you know, this is, they help you grow. I mean, I do things, I remember now what elementary teachers did. I mean, they set you on the path. While parents are good, I mean, my parents have contributed tremendously, but teachers, I mean, they shape you. So thank you so much for both of you for emphasizing the points on which our governments, our decision makers pay attention to at this moment, at a difficult time, not only in America and Canada, but also around the world. Thank you so much, Dr. Kevin Komashiro, and thank you, Philip Lai, for coming
Thank you.
and talking with you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Abdul Wahid, for producing today's show. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and you're watching Muslim Network TV. Stay tuned for other programs. We're always there on Galaxy 19 satellite throughout Canada, USA, and Mexico, but also on Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Roku, and a whole lot of social media, including our own website, muslimnetwork.tv. Peace. Salam.